This podcast is brought to you by StarCharge, the largest EV charging manufacturer in the world, and is also a provider of residential and commercial battery storage and microgrid solutions. And Kempower, the reliable, quick, and scalable EV charging solutions for everyone and everywhere. This episode is also made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for Out of Spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes. Hello and welcome back to the Out of Spec podcast, y'all. Today I am thrilled to be joined by Jerome, our resident Out of Spec Renew pioneer, running the channel where our team explores all sorts of second life opportunities for old classic cars turned electric, new applications for EV batteries, and much more. And there's great opportunity and potential just waiting to be taken advantage of to find new lives and new ways to electrify our beloved automobiles. And today, we are also joined by Chris Hazell, CEO of Felton. Their organization works to design, develop, and manufacture electric vehicle systems while also working to empower automotive workshops and vehicle restorers across Europe, Australia, and North America to install systems built with OEM levels of performance, reliability, and support. Really excited to have you on today, Chris, to talk about all this. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
And thank you, Jerome, also for joining me today. Great to have you.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah, super excited. Jerome and I have been talking about this, and kind of like getting to know you before getting to know you, Chris. And I'm excited to learn more about this. I think this is a really cool space to be in. I think your story is really interesting, and I'm excited to share it with our audience. So maybe we can start with a bit of a solid introduction and background in case people haven't heard of you or Felton, to give our audience an idea of what we're working with today. So do you mind sharing with our audience a bit about your journey into the electric vehicle and conversion industry and your role at Felton as CEO?
Yeah, so I've had a bit of a weird entry into the EV space, I suppose. Originally, I started in stage lighting and robotic moving lights, so not in automotive world at all, but obviously very technology driven. I then moved into massive, great gen sets, so big diesel generators that kick out a lot of fumes, and did loads of stuff all over the world with those. And then I finally got to a point where I just couldn't be away anymore, wanted to settle down in Bristol in the UK where we're based. And I started up a little vehicle shop just doing service repair work, which I did for a couple of years, but it got pretty tiresome, just service and repairing cars. So I then transitioned and got a nice little workshop and started doing high-end vehicle builds. So things like Audi R8s, supercharged kits, sort of a weird mixture of sort of really high-end, but just couple of cars a year, not that many, for sort of high net worth individuals. And then one day I actually had a customer, or became a customer, turn up and was like, I've got this split screen camper van and no one will touch it, but I want to make it electric. So he sort of gave me this camper van and all these Tesla bits, but no one had made them work yet. There's some odd bits being done by EV West and stuff over in the US, but there wasn't really any plug and play systems. There was no guidelines of how you actually do this and make this work. So I sort of got stuck into that. That customer just paid my hourly rate and basically gave me a license to just start learning these things, but not at my cost, which was absolutely great. But alongside that, I actually started converting a R32 Skyline myself as a personal project, because I was always into JDM vehicles. So I've had lots of Z cars and stuff over the years. And I had an old Skyline lying around. So we started converting that, which caused a lot of controversy in the space. To say the least, because I was the one that was destroying a Nissan GTR, as they all call it. But it was quite fun to be on the other side of things for once. And actually, I've got quite used to being that person that annoys everyone and is doing things that no one's happy with. But the market's changing, and people are starting to come across the EVs and starting to see the benefit of the retrofit market within the space. So that was where I've come from, where we started. We then set a company up, me and Alex Dog, my business partner. He does all our future development and design work. And I obviously run as CTO of the company. So when we started the company, we actually started doing high performance stunt vehicles at the start. That was what we did to start off with. So we did a load of electric vehicles for a show in Macau, just outside of China, which is an indoor electric vehicle show, basically, where they did drifting all day and all this sort of stuff, which is quite exciting. But that gave us a real deep dive into rapid development of electric vehicles. And we were in a great situation because all these vehicles would go and run for about 6 months and they get taken apart again. So we could run them hard for 6 months, take them apart, work out what worked, what didn't work, where things were breaking and all that sort of stuff, because they'd be used and abused basically in the stunt industry. And we've built a lot of vehicles in the stunt industry for Warner Brothers and Disney. I just can't tell you which ones we've done. But there's quite a few vehicles in the films which are electric, but no one knows they're electric basically, because they've had to be built to meet certain safety requirements of areas where they're filming. And then leading us on to today, we basically now learned there was a massive gap in the market and started transitioning across to designing and developing systems that all work together to allow the retrofit of vehicles. We don't just do cars, we also do boats as well and solar storage. So we've sort of learned that the systems we've designed and developed over the years have now moved across and can be used in multiple industries. So as new industries are coming online, we're able to support basically and push our products into those industries. So my day-to-day world, CEO of Felton, is pretty much a massive mixture of everything. We have 32 members of staff, but luckily I have my head of operations, Camille, who manages the staff and the team. We then have, I think it's a 12-person development team, which is managed by a guy called Chris, manages our development team. And they're split up and working on separate projects. We've got basically team leads, and then they each have their members of staff they work with to design and develop different systems. It means we can develop multiple systems all at once in different areas. So we're not all focusing on one thing at once, which is quite exciting because it means we're always designing and developing clever new things, but everyone's got their own view on it. Everyone comes up with their own way. So you end up with lots of different approaches, which for us has been great because it means we've been able to rapidly develop lots of systems for lots of different vehicles with a huge amount of crossover. And then I'm dealing with things like fundraising and cash flow and all the really fun stuff that comes with a business, because it's not everything you see online and you see, oh, Felton are doing this. There's a lot of work that goes on in the background, expanding the premises, building stuff, dealing with builders, there's just so many different areas that ends up going into a CEO, and there's lots of unexciting stuff that people do not see.
All the unexciting stuff that lets the exciting stuff happen, though. And, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that sounds like you wear a lot of hats, and also that your team has the space to be creative and approach these projects from their point of view, which I think it's shown to work, right? Different teams with different approaches and diverse people in it. So very cool. It's also cool to hear that, you didn't necessarily like grow up always tinkering with cars. It was more the tech side of things that you got into, which it makes sense going into. And maybe you did tinker with cars. I have no idea, but
I did a lot of my family are aircraft engineers or vehicle mechanics. So okay. Grown up tinkering with cars, but I want to go and do art and design. So completely opposite to what your parents tell you to do is what I did. And guess what? I ended up back to engineering anyway. So it didn't work out too well.
Different path, same destination. So that's really cool. It does sound like those first opportunities to work on these electric projects were, like, especially with the films that you're talking about, were kind of brought on by either regulation or policy that they were having to meet and then electrify vehicles, which is kind of different from someone like the other customer that said, I just really want to electrify this thing. So that's kind of cool. Have you seen that as an influence in your work, regulation and policy, which we'll dive into more later, but just in general, is that a big force?
It's difficult because in the retrofit industry, there is literally no regulation or policy. It's like the Wild West. It's awful, basically. There's just no standards. But what we've been quite lucky with at Felton is we've actually done a couple of projects with OEMs. So we did the classic minis, or I think in the US I know as the Coopers, most people know as Mini Coopers. So we actually developed a system for the classic Mini for BMW, and we did 5 for BMW, and now we build a kit which is actually branded with their branding because they certified it. But that really made us realize to the level we had to build stuff out to meet the OEM requirements, which meant ISO approvals, lots of design analysis, failure analysis, and all this stuff, which, to be honest, before then, we weren't doing, and none of the EV industry really right now actually doing in the retrofit. So it made us make a massive change in the company. I think it was about 2.5 years ago. It really made us reevaluate the business, the position we were in, and how we had to meet those requirements. And what happened is we met the requirements, and then we didn't change back from there since then. We then maintained that trajectory of seeing how good can we get, how close to an OEM level and quality can we succeed, and can we get to? Obviously within reason, in that we don't have billions of pounds and a humongous development team, but how close can we get to OEM on a budget, shall we say? Obviously they have huge amounts of money for testing and all that sort of stuff, which we don't. But we sort of learned now that what we do is, for every system we design and develop, we produce our own vehicle which runs that system, and that vehicle gets driven day in and day out by staff members. So any system we're selling, we've already got a vehicle with that in that's probably done 10,000 miles more than any other system out there. So if something does go wrong, something does happen, we know about it before the customer does. So we don't go out there and say to everyone, our systems are always going to be absolutely perfect, because, to be honest, we don't know. On some aspects, after 50,000 miles, there might be a component that fails, but the chances are we're going to know about that 10, 15,000 miles before anyone else will. So we'll be able to put a plan in place to retrofit or to modify that component before it ever becomes an issue for the end user.
Mm-hmm. I mean, sounds like a very logical approach, of course, because you are a bit on a frontier as well, which makes me wonder about, there's a lot of experimentation that your team is doing. You're trying to you're luckily just able to kind of approach this Wild West and go after it. So what remains your North Star for your mission at Felton? What is kind of the guiding light when you're able to kind of expand your scope or try new things?
I think for us, it's coming into standardization and cost. So as much as we could do everything different every time, we've got to a point now where we've started standardizing our systems and our components so we can use them across multiple vehicles, because it helps bring the cost down. It also means, from a staff level, from a training point of view, and from a design and development structured point of view within the development team, if you're using the same core components every time that are tried and tested, it allows you to rapidly prototype and develop a new product without having to reinvent the wheel every time. We went through a very steep learning curve at the beginning for a couple of years, playing around with Tesla modules and then Mercedes B-Class modules and all these different modules from all these different OEM vehicles. We quite quickly learned how the OEMs were doing it. We've taken apart hundreds of battery packs from OEM vehicles over the years. So we did take a lot of our learning from them. It's not like we started from scratch and invented everything. We looked at what Tesla were doing. We looked at what VW were doing and went, they're doing it this way for a reason. We may not understand the reason to the same level they do, because they've spent millions or billions of pounds developing it. But if we do it the same way, we know we've played it safe, and we know we're not going to get any issues. So that's what we've done in theory. We're not going out there to say, we designed and developed everything ourselves, because we didn't. We went and looked at what everyone else, the OEMs, were doing, and was like, they're doing it that way for a reason. That's the best route for us to take. There's no point in us reinventing this. We made some tweaks. We standardized on some certain types of battery module just to make it easy to design and build. But it also means that our systems can be updated in the future. So if new battery technology does come out, we'll maintain the same form factor of battery, but the chemistry within the batteries will slowly improve. So we'll be able to just do a retrofit or an update in a couple of years' time, saving us having to redevelop the whole system. Which is what we've done with our recent Porsche kits, is we went from 52 kilowatt hours to 61 kilowatt hours, but it's in exactly the same case. It looks exactly the same. The redesign on our side was minimal because it was just a new module. It wasn't a different shape. And that's really starting to prove out itself within our industry and the approach we've taken to design.
Very cool. I love hearing about this. And I'd love to ask Jerome a question really quick. You've obviously had the chance to look at different approaches kind of in this realm and similar spots here. And there are many different ways you can go about conversion, second life for EVs, electrifying things. And what do you find, so exciting about Felton's approach so far? Not to put you on the spot, but I am.
What I would like to say is we need to go back a little bit, maybe 3 years back, when Felton was not even Felton, it was called Zero EV, and it was a significantly smaller company. But what did put Chris and his team on the map is they were sharing everything they were developing and finding out on how to build systems. They were sharing the build of complete vehicles. I remember the Mazda Miata builds it did, and everybody loved it. And they were sharing everything. And I think sharing what you learn with not only the whole industry, but a potential customer did make a huge difference. And this was 3 years ago. And now the company has completely changed, and it managed to reinvent itself. And now they are a tier one manufacturer providing system for companies like Morgan in the UK, which is fantastic in 3 years. So that's what I really liked about the company is, again, fully reinventing itself and growing and growing. And the funny thing is, as you know, for the Renew channel, I've been traveling the world, visiting different companies and specialists converting classic vehicles. And every time there is one component coming from Felton, and more they're using the complete bolt-on system. So they're not the only one, obviously, but coming with full bolt-on system is completely changing the game in the EV conversion world, because it just makes it so easy for specialists to convert a car and make it ready in a matter of weeks or months rather than years. So that's, the key aspect is the way the company has grown and evolved in such a short amount of time.
I bet that's been a bit of a whirlwind and really exciting to see on your end, Chris, as well. Like, because up until recently, we kind of hit on these points, but you were selling more white label systems, but now you have, you're keeping that brand name Felton and, staying on once you sell them to your customers. And that's a great change to see, after starting with classic and stunt EV conversions and then launching Felton in 2018. And then, however many years, 7 years, whatever it is, you've made it like a solid
I don't want to think about it.
I know. Yeah. Right.
It seems like it's been a long time, but it really hasn't, I suppose.
I don't know. I feel like it's a great time to see that kind of growth and, becoming kind of like a leading company to look at and to be watched in, battery pack manufacturers for these low volume manufacturers in the aftermarket industry with these bolt-on conversion systems too, your universal battery. I'd love for you to speak more about all your offerings, but also I want to ask you, like, that it must have been quite the experience to see that growth happen right in front of you. What are the challenges that you've seen? Like, did you expect this kind of growth? How much has the space changed, and how adaptable have you had to be?
Yes, I think the time we saw the growth change massively for us, and to be honest, like COVID was a horrible thing, but for us as a company, it actually did us a favor at the same time, because it made us stop. So we were on the path before COVID of becoming an EV conversion shop. That was the path we were going down, was let's convert cars for customers, for end users. That was the path we were going down. And when COVID hit and everything stopped, the web store was still doing fairly well. We suddenly realized at that point that we had an opportunity to transition from a conversion shop to a design development and manufacturing shop to supply the conversion shops. Now, I don't know if we'd ever been able to naturally make that transition without having to stop, because you end up just taking on more and more conversion jobs. So you never have that opportunity where you don't have conversion work on to change your focus as a company. So COVID for us, as much as it was a horrible thing for people within the business, it really did make us just put the brakes on and just reevaluate completely. At which point we started doing the Mazda MX-5, so that's Makita, whatever it's called in America, project. Which we decided to be as open as possible. So the decision we've always taken as a company is we can hide things, and it's very easy to hide things in the conversion world because everything's built inside a metal box. You never know what's going on inside. So a company out there can be building this beautiful system, but inside the box, it could be an absolute mess, basically, without you knowing. So we decided to be very open, which means we gave away a lot of sort of trade secrets, I suppose, and we did allow other companies to copy us. But at the same point of time, we gave a huge amount of companies and B2Bs sort of I'm trying to remember what the right word is. What's the right word for it? Gone blank. Jerome probably knows the right word for it. The confidence, that's the one, in us as a company, because we showed them I got there eventually, because we showed them everything goes into the batch pack and how we build it. It's the reason BMW reached out to us originally, because they'd seen how we'd done it with the MX-5 and straight away gone, oh, they did it the correct way, therefore we want to work with them. So showing how we do stuff inside and out has really helped us bring in customers or businesses that respect the level of engineering we go to. And we have just started filming for a new project now, which is our Caterham, which you don't have in the US, but they're sort of a track car, sort of race car in the UK and Europe. And that's all being filmed for YouTube. So we're going in depth on that now as sort of another retake, I suppose, from the MX-5, and we're going to go in depth on our new systems. So how we're now doing it and why we're doing it the way we're doing it, and the steps we take for a development phase. The fact we'll bring a car, 3D scan it, then we'll reverse engineer it into CAD, and all the steps we take to get to a finished product and all the testing we do. So we're now going to open up again, I think, and really go into depth in that.
More transparency. That's pretty cool. I think, it's a good point. Like when you're in a new space like this, I mean, giant automakers can get a look into what you're doing, and then your startup can, be propelled forward, where sometimes those trade secrets are so precious you don't want to share. But I think that's a good lesson to take away, and kind of interesting. And I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about how kind of your business model is broken down, what you offer, because I know you have like the full systems, then you have the battery packs for cars and boats, and then you also like have the components as well, so you don't have to do a full system. So how is that? How does that balanced within your company?
So at the start, the web store was key and great, and to be honest, it helped us cover the bills, cover the salaries when we started the business, and it still does a good lump now. So the web store is great just because it allows us to take that over. The benefit with the web store that we have at the moment is it allows us to buy larger volume, because if we're buying so many thousands of battery modules for our use, but then also we've got end users buying them as well, it means we can buy at a larger volume, which means we can get a better pricing point, which means we can sell them at a better pricing point. So there's pros and cons to that. Obviously, you've got to do additional support with the web store. But what we have found is a lot of the customers that have come in through the web store and bought components then end up becoming customers that are buying kits, because they do their first build, they buy the bits from the web store, and then they realize they want to start an EV shop because they've done one build. And then they come to us because it's where they bought their parts from and go, actually, I want to start converting these cars. Can I buy your kits to convert those cars? So there's sort of this knock-on process, I suppose, from that. Alongside that, we also offer training courses. So we're City and Guild and TUV approved. So we offer high voltage training courses to the customer base as well. So by giving them the training, it then gives them the confidence they then need to work with high voltage electricity safely. And also we train them on our systems and our products. So our training rig is actually the system we built on YouTube with the MX-5. We took the car apart and built a full training rig out of it. So they train on a whole vehicle system, which allows them to see all the bits we use, why we use them, and then they can really start buying more bits from us. The core business for us at the moment now is battery pack manufacturing. So we do have the full systems for the Mini, the Porsche, Land Rover, and soon to be Caterham, and a couple of other cars we've worked on, but the battery pack volumes are a lot higher. And that's normally because there's more and more companies now coming along that can do the system integration but can't build the packs. When we started, it was no one knew anything about the industry at all, and there was no one doing any of it. So therefore, you had to offer everything. You had to offer the motors, the inverters, the batteries, the whole package. But you're now starting to learn that actually kids are now been trained in university, and they're coming out with a base level already. Things like Formula Student, where they're actually building electric track cars for their student projects and stuff like that. So they're coming out with a base knowledge of how to do system integration now. So they know where to go and buy the other bits, but they still don't know how to build in-depth battery packs. So we're starting to find that the battery pack side of the business will pick up, but a lot of the companies we supply to will do their own motor and inverter from another company, and they'll do all the integration of the system, which is quite good for us because it means we can just build large volume of a single battery pack, which is why we're now expanding more and trying to build a bigger facility for doing more battery packs, especially in the marine industry, because we're seeing the numbers raised in that industry massively. The retrofit industry is going to be an interesting one as to whether it takes off large scale or whether it stays sort of a bit more of a cottage industry. But I suppose Jerome may have probably more insight on that, having traveled and done an awful lot of filming recently with different people on Out of Spec.
Yeah, what do you think, Jerome?
Before I reply to this, I was really interested, and I wanted to ask you if there were advantages in manufacturing battery packs in the UK, because more and more companies are building in Europe or in China. You could think you could manufacture in the US, but are there advantages in doing it in the UK?
There's pros and cons to all of it. China is cheap, as everyone knows, but QC and quality is a long-term issue. Importing to the US from China is difficult as well. The tariffs are quite high, and that's always going to continually fluctuate. And there's been a massive change globally of companies pulling away from China, and sort of built in the US, built in the UK is becoming a thing again. It didn't used to be. So that seems to be a big change that's happening at the moment. What we found is we still buy a lot of Chinese products, but we do most of the remanufacturing in the UK. The advantage for us is that we maintain one location that does all the manufacturing. What I've seen, and there's been failures in the past from companies of where they try and spread themselves out globally, but then you're trying to maintain a QC standard in multiple locations, which is really hard to try and do that blanket across multiple companies, especially when you're quite small. So you tend to be better off actually maintaining your quality in one location to a really high level, and then shipping that out globally, because the actual cost implications of developing it and making it say somewhere else, then shipping it, and there's being an issue, it soon outweighs the cost benefits you have by having to do additional support, or then sending someone out to repair it or shipping it back for repair. So one central location for quality control is key, which is what a lot of the OEMs have done. If you notice, most of the OEMs have massive factories building these vehicles because they control quality in one location. You don't tend to see the companies out there that have tried to do micro locations in loads of different places. They don't tend to succeed because of the fact they're having to do QC quality checks everywhere.
That's a good point. Yeah, less breaking points along the way. Really just, makes sense with that quality control. And of course, when you're considering the battery technology, I've heard many, many stories where, basically it's great to know exactly where it came from too, so that you can work with whoever sold you that battery when you do run into problems, versus them like going back up the chain to figure out how to troubleshoot whatever issues you have. So more centralized. I'm definitely seeing that trend and can see the benefits there as well. You mentioned, of course, training, how you offer training to your customers, but also this being a new industry, it seems like there are people coming out of colleges and universities with the skills that you want. But I'd love to speak a little bit about, the workforce, but also the training that's required as this space grows. Do you think we're going in the right direction? Do you think there's enough opportunities, or are there like plenty of opportunities, but we don't have everyone trained quite right yet? What is your input? And I'd love to hear Jerome's too, because I'm sure you both have something to say about this.
So I think recently we've definitely seen, I'm not say a downturn, but there's definitely been something going on in the EV space. There's been some, bad press releases, and there's been our EVs are not selling as well, but actually the uptake was massive on EVs, and it's just leveled off a little bit, which is common. It's going to happen. And obviously the pull away from China and in some countries as well has not helped that. But I think it's just a little lull that will pick back up again quite quickly. I think what we're starting to see now is more and more companies are realizing EV is going to be the future. Places like SEMA, like last year, that was the EV stuff was in the main hall, which it hadn't been before. So it's shown that they're starting to take it on and understand that's going to be the future of the aftermarket. It's just now trying to get all these people on board. But the only way we're going to get them on board is to offer training. So we do lots of training here in the UK. There's also people like Legacy EV in the US that do 5-day in-depth EV training courses, and they'll actually teach someone how to do a conversion start to finish over 5 days. Now, obviously, they're not going to teach you everything, but they teach you all the fundamentals, which then gives the confidence to those shops to then start offering retrofit. So I think we're in a bit of a weird space at the moment, where it's to do with training and supply of systems is the other thing. Like, we're ramping up to supply systems, and if we can get our lead times down, I think more people will do it. But what we've found is that with a lot of the customer base, with the way the world is these days, if you order something, you want it yesterday. You don't want to wait 6 months. You don't want to wait a year for your car to be built and delivered to you. So if we can get our lead times down to, say, 2 weeks or a month and have stuff sat on the shelf, then in theory, the lead time of the car being built might be, say, 3 months or maybe less. So therefore, a lot of these people that are impatient and don't want to wait, hopefully would get something converted and get out on the road a lot faster.
Wow, that would be pretty cool to get your lead time down that far. And Jerome, I know that you've seen all these projects happen, and it's a totally new undertaking, right? Working with a lot more electricity than before. So what is your take on training and that aspect of this workforce, these projects going forward?
Well, as you may notice in every video for the Renew channel, I try to promote the fact that anyone should train at least the very basics, working with high voltage. But I was lucky enough to follow several training in the UK, in the US, and there are fantastic opportunities. Not only you can find very interesting trainings, but you can find them at different levels. And I'm thinking about especially the younger audience when you're still studying. I think considering doing high voltage or EV training is a very good opportunity, because the whole industry, not only the EV industry, but the car industry, the legacy car industry requires more trained technicians. And I'm not talking just about people in factories. I'm talking anyone in a garage nowadays or in a workshop needs to be high voltage certified. Even if you work in a body shop, you as soon as you're going to touch a car that is an hybrid or an EV with high voltage, you need to be trained. So there's a huge opportunity for companies training people, and also a huge opportunity for businesses with team. They need to train their employees. And if you're just starting your journey in your career, it's a very good thing to consider training in the high voltage or EV training in general.
Definitely so much opportunity. A lot of people are looking how to get into this space, and I think figuring out, okay, this is opening up. There's more opportunities here. What skills do I have to have? Of course, that is a clear way in. So it's cool to see companies like Felton really, building up their footprint and everything. Okay, so you have recent news that you're opening your new manufacturing facility, Chris. It's broken ground, right? You are planning to do mostly battery manufacturing there. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've got a new facility currently being built, which we're doing a massive move around at our premises, basically to rejig everything. Because as we've sort of grown, we've added bits and taken on more premises, but it's never been, I suppose, set up perfectly for production or manufacturing. It's sort of happened. So the new facility is actually being built, and we're going to structure it from the start to be as efficient as possible to manufacture. So we're actually going to have all of our base stock and our battery pack manufacturing in the new facility. But it's going to free up space for us to set up a battery module manufacturing facility at our location. Because at the moment we're buying all our modules in from China, which is not great long term. And there's a lot of now sort of battery factories appearing globally in different locations, producing prismatic cells. So our plan is to start doing module manufacturing, so we can buy the cells and then manufacture the modules in the UK, which does allow us to do some exciting new things, that we can standardize the form factor long term. Because at the moment we stock about 6 or 7 different versions of the same module, just because we need different series and parallel links and stuff, which is very frustrating, because it means we stock all these other parts slightly different every time. So by us manufacturing our own, we can standardize everything, which will be great. And it means everything then, more and more is manufactured in the UK. Which gives us sort of a better approval stamp of built in the UK. In order to be, so I think it's classed as UK manufactured, you must do more than 60% of the remanufacturing in the UK, which would be quite good from an origin point of view. Shipping globally, it actually becomes a fully UK assembled product then at that point, which is quite exciting. But we're also going to integrate more into the batteries at that point as well. So we'll be putting all our battery management systems inside the modules, which means less wiring, less electronics, simpler systems, more reliable. So there's just lots and lots of extra things we can do by moving into the module manufacturing world.
Amazing. So you're innovating. You're obviously seeing some success where you can expand, and also like, okay, wow, this is really a spot that we want to step into. And what I've found is collaboration often drives innovation in the EV sector. So how important has it been to you all to have collaboration between either, whatever it is, your work in the public, industry players, government entities, or other stakeholders, to promote your work and share, your systems out there, your batteries out there, your work out there?
It's for things like the universal battery pack, for instance, has come around because of collaboration with other companies that we supply out to. Because we're supplying out a huge amount of battery modules and cooling plates to companies, but they were all putting them into a roughly similar form factor that fits under the bonnet of a car. So we took constant feedback on that, worked out what power outputs do they need, what connections do they need, what charging do they need, and then started developing a system which sort of brings all those things together into one to make it as simple as possible. So which is where the universal pack was born. We do a huge amount of collaboration with Jaunt in Australia. They also act as Felton Australia, so for reselling products. But they do design and development of Land Rover systems. But they've been massively collaborative with us of actually helping us sort of guide us as to what they need and don't need for their battery packs, which has allowed us to do development of more packs. Also with Legacy V in the US, a number of other companies that we work with and supply to globally and take feedback from. It's meant we've now got a couple of other battery packs we haven't released yet that we're about to release very soon. But the new battery pack offering, all based around our universal package, will now in theory give us a range of battery packs that will fit probably 90% of vehicles, I would say, especially all the front engine rear wheel drive vehicles or four wheel drive vehicles out there. And they're all based around the fundamental basis that we did with our universal battery pack. So the component crossover is massive. We're not having to redesign anything. It's the same base that we can do and produce in our manufacturing facility in volume moving forward. And then we've also done a lot recently in the marine industry, because it was a similar thing where there's companies getting involved in the marine industry, but they don't know how to do battery packs. So they've come to us to design and develop battery packs from the marine industry, which luckily weren't that different. It was just changing the material choices to make sure that they can cope with salt water better than normal, shall we say. And that if someone submerges their boat, that the battery pack is still okay, which is a bit more of a bigger issue. But and we prefer they don't try submerging their boat with a battery in. But so far so good. We haven't had any issues, and they have tried submerging them with batteries in, and so far they've been good.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool. I love to hear how we're using batteries on boats. I think there's like typical ways, and then there's like generators and stuff. But I'm always like, oh yeah, all the different challenges that involve a whole lot more water, salt water at that.
It's the safety as well, because in a car you can pull over to the side of the road and just wait for the AA or someone to come pick you up. On a boat, if you break down, you're in the middle of nowhere. So it's designing the system so there is override. So when stuff fails, it fails on and not fails off. So there's all these bits to put in, or we won't run one pack, but we'll run 2 or 3 that are daisy chained together, but you can lose multiple battery packs and still keep going. So there's lots of things around that. But the standards in the boat world are a lot stricter. So that's really helped with us recently, is that we've started looking at standards in the the marine world, basically. There's different standards depending on inland or offshore or marina. There's different types of standards, but it does mean that we've been able to look into those standards and start working to them more, which will feed into automotive stuff as well, because it'll up the level in some of the automotive stuff we do.
Very cool. Presented opportunities in the marine space. I love it. Are there any like emerging technologies or developments in the EV space, the battery space, that are most exciting to you, or that you're like, oh, I can't wait to take advantage of that?
I've slowly learned over the last couple of years that until I physically see something and it's in front of me, I don't think it exists, which I know is probably not necessarily the best way to look at it, but there's been an awful lot of smoke and mirrors and, there's this new battery technology coming out and there's this new battery technology coming. Every year you hear of a new battery technology that's going to change the world, but it's whether it's actually manufacturable and it's ever going to go into large scale volume. So I'm excited that in the next 10 years, battery packs might be quarter of the size and they might be half the weight and all that sort of stuff, which would be amazing. But I think it's not someone flicks a switch overnight and suddenly there's this amazing new technology. It takes 5 years, or it takes a period of time, and it will slowly get there. One of the good things that's happened recently is that the US has adapted North American charging standard instead of CCS, which for the retrofit industry is a lot better because the charge port is a lot smaller. So when you're retrofitting a car that normally had a petrol filler, they're quite small. So North American charger standard is quite a game changer in that world for the US market, because it means you can fit your charge connector where your fuel port originally was, whereas at the moment a lot of people have to modify body work and or relocate them, which is not great. There's some exciting stuff I've seen recently with chargers. So instead of the battery physically changing and the battery technology changing, the way the power is delivered to the battery might change in a very clever way, which may allow the batteries to charge at a faster rate. But that's all very new technology that hasn't been out yet. But I know there's a couple of companies working on those solutions. So you may actually find that the car, you may have your current Tesla, but there may be a change to the actual physical off-board charger that puts the DC power in, that actually allows it to charge even faster without you having to change the battery chemistry. So that could be quite an exciting thing. It means cars haven't got to be updated and changed as well if you can improve the charging infrastructure instead. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's exciting. There's some exciting stuff we're working on. So we've started doing a lot more thermal management now, which I think a lot of companies and a lot of the OEMs do take for granted, which is how you manage the battery temperatures and the motor temperatures to keep them optimum at all times. Because what we've found, especially working on the Land Rover systems, is that the vehicle is basically a brick. So it's not particularly aerodynamic. And you can't change how the car looks because it's its character that people love. So you start looking at what else can you change and improve to make it more efficient. So now we've gone the route of thermal management, and how do we improve our thermal management systems to try and get the most out of the batteries or the most amount of range, depending on different weathers. And with some of the global temperature changes now we're starting to see as well, we've started learning that actually having a system that can cope with, I don't know, minus 10 to 40 degrees averagely is not enough. And we need to be lower temperature and higher temperature range. So how can we make one system that can cover a larger temperature range rather than have multiple different systems? Which is what Tesla and the other companies have been doing for years. We're now just trying to bring that into the aftermarket industry as well.
Great challenges ahead. Sounds like you're motivated to do it. So I'll get back to your motivations in a second, but I also want to look back at the projects you've done. You've had quite the story, and Jerome has, paid witness to a lot of that. So Jerome, are there any projects that Felton has done, whether they were Felton at first or not, that you have loved to see?
Well, I really like to see Chris spin his Skyline as he was drifting all over the place throughout Europe. So that was quite something. As he said earlier, the GTR was almost a sacrilege for many people to convert a GTR to electric. But they do electric Mini, and I was never interested in a Mini, and then I test drove their car, and it just makes you fall in love with the Mini just because it's so peppy. It just corners like a go-kart, and it's super light. And I really like the ways it did a relatively small battery pack, the right amount of power, so it still feels like a Mini, and it's not overpowered, and you have traction control, so they managed to mix the right balance of weight, performance, and also bring technology in. And more recently, I've looked into their Defender, the Defender 90, which I'll be taking somewhere for the first road trip to a show. So I look forward to this because it will be the first time I actually test drive their universal battery pack fitted in a truck. So that should be quite interesting. So we're talking about only maybe a 3-hour drive one way and then 3-hour round trip. So that should be quite interesting, and we'll see what it brings, because I will have to recharge using the CCS system. So we'll see how it goes in the UK.
Interesting. Okay, so you're going to actually be taking one of Felton's projects out on the road, which is cool.
Yeah.
Will we be able to follow you along on the Out of Spec Renew channel for that one?
Oh yes, definitely. You'll see everything about this trip and many more on the Out of Spec Renew channel. So yeah, expect this in a couple of weeks.
So Chris, you'll be tuning into that too, I'm sure. But I'd also love to know, you've done a lot of projects, and right now you're doing, like you said, not some of the not so flashy work as CEO, but that makes every gear turn, that helps you achieve all your goals. And I'd love to know what has been one of your favorite projects and why?
Favorite projects. One that I can actually talk about is the issue.
Yeah,
that's normally the issue I have, because there's a couple that are really, really good, but I can't talk about, which is really annoying. Favorite projects. I'm probably going to say the Mini was a great one. But I think the Porsche is probably the favorite project, which I know a lot of people will be surprised about within the business. But I think with the Porsche, we learned a lot. It was stressful, it was difficult, it was hard work. But in that case, we learned so much with the Porsche. We started developing Porsche, I think it was about 3 years ago, before we made the big change. So we were developing it for customers, to build customers' cars with. And then obviously we made a massive change to go, actually, how do we make this as a bolt-in kit that anyone can fit? So the Porsche has been one of those projects that really started us down the route of a bolt-in retrofit kit. And it's also an extremely complicated kit, the Porsche, because there's no space available anywhere in the car. Everything's at its limit. Everyone criticizes you because it's a Porsche and you shouldn't convert a Porsche to electric. So the Porsche has probably been the most stressful, exciting process out of everything we've done. But now it's in full production. We've got a great team working on it. And we're turning Porsche kits out regularly, and they're going all over the world into some absolutely stunning vehicles, which is great to see.
Yeah, I mean, some of the hardest challenges are the most rewarding, if not most of them, is so with all these challenges, with all that you have under your belt, with all that you're looking at accomplishing, what motivates you every day to continue your work in this field, and what are you hoping to achieve?
I think the field itself, the business doesn't feel like work is probably the weirdest thing to say. It's fun. And I think that's the key thing, is that a lot of people love technology. They love development. They love product design. So we basically get to design and develop products every day. We get to play around with high performance vehicles every day. And I suppose we get to have lots of creative people we work with. So it's a lot of the business for me is actually the staff, not necessarily what we turn out, I think, in one way, because you just have this amazing team that are able to just produce this sort of groundbreaking products that no one else is making, and deliver these things. And I think having the team there, and sort of, I've got a lot of my family that work with me as well. So it's sort of quite an in-depth family thing, as I've got my brother, my dad, and my sister all working at the business as well. So yeah, which is never worked with family, but some situations it does work. It does work quite well. And a lot of the staff that work for me, I've worked with in the past, like a long time ago. So I was able to bring in people that I'd worked with in the past, bring them into a whole new industry that they'd never been involved with. And one of the fun things I really enjoy is sort of finding that member of staff that's not anything to do with the EV industry, but they've got a really good skill set that, if you just put them in the right position with the right tools, they'll do amazing work. And we've done that quite a few times now. And it's just, I think that's what I find quite exciting. You can pick that person, if you just get them in the right situation, they'll produce some phenomenal things. I mean, one of them's, there's a lot of member staff who've done that with. One of them is like our head of software. He was repairing iPhones. I say repair. He'll tell me off if I say repairing iPhones, but he was doing micro soldering and very in-depth repair on iPhones. Sure. But now he heads up our software stuff and basically writes huge levels of in-depth code, and is key in the company, and absolutely loves it. But a year ago, he wasn't doing any of that. He was all self-taught, and he's really done really well moving into the industry. So there's some. I think the staff for me is probably my biggest motivation. And then it's continually building new things, like just playing with new technology and breaking things. It's something we tend to do quite a lot of. But we've got used to breaking things. We've got used to trying things out, failing, and then trying again. We sort of take very much the sort of Elon Musk style, I suppose, which is sort of fail fast. Just try it, fail, and just keep going. Just very fast iteration. Rather than spend a year developing one thing, we'll build a prototype and test it. And then if it doesn't work, we'll build another one and try it differently. Otherwise, you just don't end up getting anywhere. You never finish anything because you're continually trying to make it perfect.
Mm-hmm. Scientific method, right? Trying to prove yourself wrong, really, is what that is. So
as fast as possible. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's really great. I really appreciate you coming on to the podcast today to share all about your story, Chris, and your work at Felton, and how you got there, what you're doing today, how it's evolved. And I encourage our audience to check y'all out and stay up to date. And where can people find you? Where should they find you?
So we're on every social media platform, as I think we're Felton Systems is what we are on all the social media platforms. And then we will be relaunching the YouTube channel at some point in the next couple of months. It's just finding time to do all the YouTube stuff in between. The day-to-day stuff is normally quite difficult.
I'm sure you have a lot on your plate. And thank you again. And thank you, Jerome, for joining us. When you can follow along with a little bit of, a featured Felton coming up on one of the Out of Spec Renew channel videos, right?
Definitely, yes. Yeah. And we'll visit those guys and maybe check their training and the different vehicles they offer and solutions. So yeah, definitely.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to hop across the pond one day soon and come check it out. Would Would love to. Yeah, thank you so much again, Chris, for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate your time and energy today.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you, audience, for tuning in. I found this really interesting, so I'm sure that you will. And if you have comments, questions, want to start some discussions, do so in the comments. We'll see if we can get any answers if you ask them, and let us know what else you're curious about. Have you ever done a conversion? What part of Felton's business model really excites you? Let us know. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Out of Spec podcast. We will catch you next time on the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.